And welcome to the show, guys. It's Jeff from Home Renovation DIY, your YouTube source for all things DIY renovation. We're here live today. We got a special guest, Joel from Electric Pro Academy. We are going to be talking about all kinds of new stuff. Solar, EV chargers, new panels, new technology that's in the electrical world as far as renovations at the residential level. Okay, we're going to try to focus residential things that you've got burning questions to. He's going to be able to throw out some, estimates on pricing and cost. Give us a little bit of a round figure on where the world's turned to, because, let's face it, things change and everything's getting more expensive. So we need to have an idea about value proposition if we're going to make changes in our home. All right. Don't forget, coming up on the 16th of December is a members-only live show Saturday afternoon. We're going to go a couple of hours. Let's say hi to everybody. Existential Paint is in the house. Chris is in the house. Wow, there's a couple hundred of you already. This is amazing, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. December 19th, we are doing a giveaway, live giveaway. I'm done the project down here in Leesburg, and all the tools that I bought, I'm going to be giving away. And so join us for that show. That's going to be on a Tuesday. All right. Without any further ado, let's bring Joel in. We'll introduce our guest, and then we can talk all things electrical. Joel, welcome to the show, buddy. Nice to have you here.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Jeff.
Well, that's cool. Now, I'm just taking a look at the chat is starting to blow up. This is awesome. Guys, want you to ask your questions today because we're going to have a bit of a conversation. We're going to put links in the video description for you so you can find Joel's channel. Just check out maybe some of his playlists, okay? Here on our channel, it's all about helping make sure that you're successful, right? And so I'm not an electrician, so I can only go so far with my teaching you what I've learned and my experience, which is all I do here. I just teach you what I've learned, and I have gaps. So we bring in guys like Joel so that we can help fill those gaps. This is the whole idea, dude. It's the brand new world. My, we got people from all over the place, different ages of homes. Don't forget, if you ask a question, tell us where you live and the age of your home. It'll be very, very relevant, okay? Joel has got experience. Now, let me just break this in. Joel, introduce yourself. Tell everybody what you do, your company, where you're heading with it, so they have an idea who is our guest today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jeff. Well, I started in the trade at the age of 19, shortly after high school. I apprenticed with my future father-in-law, a fantastic gentleman and a third-generation union master electrician. It was about 2008, 2009, housing recession hit, and he phased into retirement. I tried to hire on a couple places, a plumber, a framer. They all looked at me and said, "Kid, nobody is hiring right now." And I said, "Okay, I've got a Ford Ranger, I've got 4 milk crates and about $1,000 in hand tools. I'm going to start my own business." So that was actually perfect timing because everybody wanted the kid who was only charging $25 an hour and had zero overhead. And so that's exactly what I did. And I had a good launch, hired my first employee about a year in. Today, 13 years later in business, 17 years in the trade, we have 90 employees. We are a solar, electric, plumbing, HVAC licensed in all categories, multi-trade company. And I genuinely love what I do. There's probably 8 years into the trade before I actually said, when I grew up, I think I'm going to be an electrician. At that point, I think I had 6 employees. So, it took me a little while to get settled, but I do hold 50 licenses today, both a licensed general contractor. In some jurisdictions, actually licensed to build skyscrapers. That's a story in and of itself, but predominantly just a licensed master electrician.
Right. So skyscrapers, that's awesome. Now I got a question. What came first, the job or the girlfriend?
Well, I had the interest first, to be fair. The job was second and the marriage was third. So
that's good because there was no marriage if you got fired.
That's it. Yeah. Everything was on the line,
That's a great employee right there.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, I just wanted to say cheers to all the members in the chat, guys. Appreciate y'all coming. Let's just jump in real quick. We'll do an overview because I was looking at your channel and you got a lot of information on there that I can't offer. So first of all, in the world of solar panels, can we just be honest? How efficient are they? You're from the Indianapolis area, right? How efficient are they in your region, and versus going further north? Because the big concern is the further you are from the equator, the less you're going to get. Is it worth the investment today in today's market without government subsidy?
Oh, deep end. Jeff, I'm in the solar business. You're expecting me to throw them under the bus, right? Okay, here's my honest opinion. It is the wild, wild west because, right, you've
Right.
got international supply chain that dramatically affects pricing. We have seen prices jump, prices fall. It's not just a steady decline over time. You've got federal regulation. We've seen that change in our 12 years in solar. You've got
Okay.
state regulation that changes. And then you have local utilities and jurisdictions with their standards and requirements. So it is county by county, city by city, state by state, and personal economics come into play. If a 10-year ROI is worth it to you on a 30-year product, then yes, solar is worth it in the state of Indiana today without
Okay.
subsidy. But again, it's a state by state, county by county, city by city.
I get it. It's just it's a generic question because it seems like there's so much information out there that, man, it is really personal, right? It's like getting health advice from someone who lost 10 pounds. How did you get there? Well, it's going to work for everybody now, right? Like maybe they were just stressed out at work for a few weeks and lost some weight. You don't know, right? So that's how I look at the solar industry. It's kind of like, is there any real truth out there to any of this? Because it seems to be so hyped and so pushed. And is our electrical grid in need of us being more proactive in assisting and reducing our own consumption? Like, where are we in this world? Is that a question that you have any that you can lead to?
Oh my goodness, right? Okay, so there are various thoughts around here. First of all, we're talking about 300 million Americans plus Canadians. We're going to count them today because you're here, Jeff.
So
And
301, yeah.
and so it's a mixed bag, right? Again, but I will tell you that infrastructure, electrical distribution infrastructure that's being built today is generally, because of cost measures and returns on investment for investors and publicly owned utilities this year, right? The infrastructure generally only considers today. There's not a future cast where they're really not building. And I've been told this by utility engineers. They said if 25% of the homeowners in this subdivision added an electric vehicle today, it would break everything. That's a fact and a reality. And we're not building this grid for tomorrow because we need to hit our targets this year. And so there's this distributed generation reality. There's this ever increasing demand for electricity and the electrification of America, whether you're an electric furnace, electric water heater, electric car kind of guy or not. We're all using more electricity than we did 20 years ago. That's a fact. And the utility company has an ever increasing complex requirement to broker the many various forms of energy and that's flowing multiple directions and not just a singular direction.
I'm loving this. Joe is a bit of a politician too at the same time. That's great.
Wait, did I say a whole bunch without saying anything at all? Is that what you just said?
Something like that, yeah. All right, well, let's just break this down. I wanted to talk about the EV world, right? So for everybody who's got an electric vehicle or looking to get one, I guess that's a different market because it's kind of hard to have an EV and not have a charger. So what's going on in the EV world? Is there such a thing as a do-it-yourself electric car plug-in system that you just have to run a wire to? So could like a homeowner, is it a 20 amp circuit? Like give us the basics on what we're expecting if we're going to get an EV and how much kind of ballpark cost to add it to our panel. Man, and can every house do that transition if they have a 100 amp service?
Yeah, valid question. Shameless plug. We've got some really easy 30-minute EV videos that are step-by-step and break it all down. Yes, I think one breaker, one wire, and one termination is within reach for most DIYers. There can be some complex situations, but we describe those with respect to panel limitation, like you mentioned, Jeff, kind of working back to front. There are products on the market that will manage and monitor the amount of energy that's being drawn by your home, and it will toggle down the rate of electric vehicle charging in order to keep your system within its capacity, i.e. prevent it from overheating and failure or nuisance tripping or whatever the case would be.
So we got some smart home technology that can basically say, hey, we'll charge the car at night when you're not using any other power. That makes more sense because we're not going to charge your car during Thanksgiving when you're cooking your turkey and everything else.
Bingo.
And doing laundry and So if you have a 100 amp service, it is feasible to get an electric vehicle then?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And it's not scary. And a DIYer could pull this off?
Yeah, I believe that.
All right. The product, where would you find something like that?
Yeah, DCC 11.
Would that be an Amazon or is Home Depot selling this stuff? Like, what does the guy do?
It's probably still a little bit more specialized at this point, but there's what's called a DCC11. It's a simple in and out set of terminations, and that's the one that comes to mind as an energy management tool to keep people
Okay.
within the limitation of their system. In addition, like you mentioned, Jeff, every charging app, every electric vehicle, every wall connector of every type will have the ability to schedule. There's some exceptions, I'm sure, but the ability to schedule the charge for off-peak. The code really doesn't recognize that as a means of managing energy because they know user error is going to come into play at some point. But that's a homeowner discretionary decision that can be made as to how they apply heavy loads. I always advise the controls to make sure that you don't overlook something and then overheat something.
Okay. Now here's a quick question for you. If someone was to call you up and say, Joel, I want you to put an EV charger in my house for me, what kind of dollars are we looking at for basic installation if running the wire doesn't take more than an hour or two?
Yeah. So jurisdictions, some require permits, some don't. There's a cost to that and a process, right? But if we're saying permits aside for a moment, because that varies, and you're putting the charger underneath or next to the panel in the garage, drywall's up, very typical scenario. You're talking about $400 typically. Trip charge, 1 hour labor, incidental materials. That would be the floor. And then if you're kind of all the way across the home with a service upgrade, it's not. We've seen $5,000-6,000 at times.
Yeah, I could see that on the extreme situation. Like,
Yep.
because in Canada we got basements, and all of our panels are in the basement, right? So depending on how finished your house is it sometimes easier to run that wire outside in conduit attached to the side of the house and go around the building than through it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So then, yeah, because when I think EVs first came out, we'd all heard in the news, oh, they're charging 10 grand to put in that. Yeah. All right. It's good to know. It can be a rather affordable process depending on the configuration of your home and where you live.
That's correct. 100%.
I got a member here, Avicii, just said that he got his system off of Amazon.
Yeah.
There he goes. I got a charge point on Amazon.
Electrical.
Sorry, dude. I got his name wrong. I'm not wearing my spectacles. I've been traveling and I lost my glasses, so I'm a little half blind here today. To go with my half deaf, safety second and all. That's my career catching up to me.
That's it. Jeff, to speak
right.
to Amazon real quick, unfortunately, as an electrical contractor, Amazon does beat out the supply houses at times, and they're probably our third choice every other day.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. There we go. All right. Well, so we've talked about EVs, basically, the solar, basically. What about the smart home technology? Because like we alluded earlier about how the demand for electricity is going off the charts, right? We still have 50% of the homes in North America built before 1980. So the plugs and the lights are all in the same circuits, and they're all incandescent bulbs, and everything has a huge draw. What is the government doing? Are there any programs out there for helping with the retrofits so that we can get LED lighting into these houses at an affordable rate? Does anybody talk about that?
Yeah, 100%, Jeff. So you've got some point of sale rebates, like Costco is running those all the time, usually utility and regional dependent in particular. But you also have utility rebates where you can call up. They might have a program that's brokered through a third party. They'll come in and give you the kind of the XYZ package free of charge. And it's kind of a goodwill offering from the utility company. They might put an aerator on your faucet, LED bulbs in your kitchen. It's usually a pretty limited package, what you would consider a starter package to whet your appetite and to help some late adopters orient and experience LED technology that maybe wouldn't have made the first decision on their own until kind of prompted.
Nice. All right. Well, listen, I got myself an Amazon Nest thermostat. Ooh, I'm getting into the modern age. To the best of my understanding, it's just basic Wi-Fi technology so I can manage the setting on the thing while I'm away from the house, right? There's no magic in that.
But I got to warn you, Jeff.
Okay.
Sometimes thermostats don't have firewalls built in. And the number one, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a Nest, but the number one method of identity theft in America is through unprotected wireless devices, specifically thermostats. So just protect your information.
Yeah. I had never even considered that.
Yeah.
That's great.
A what a casino in Vegas was hacked through a Wi-Fi enabled fish tank. Did you know that?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Yep.
That is amazing. All right. Well, listen, I just wanted to touch base on a couple of things. So, let's say I've got a two-story house, 1974, aluminum wiring. All right, unfinished basement, and I'm wanting to upgrade. What kind of expenses am I looking at to go modern in that house? And I don't want to go too crazy. I'm going to open up the floor on the main floor. I'm going to do LED lighting. So changing almost everything over and new runs to everything. How much does it cost to wire a home nowadays in a retrofit situation? Because like, I'll give you a number. Back in 95, 2000, $10,000 got a lot of electrician.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we with pricing today? Because I mean, there's lots of people that own homes who contracted an electrician 5 or 10 years ago. How much has the cost of doing work gone up nowadays?
Jeff, that house you just described, that's a $25,000 rewire all day.
There you go.
Day.
So 2.5 times of what the last time I did that job was.
Yep.
Yep. And you're in USD.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I love that. It's a good ballpark. Got to understand. You know, I've got a video out there where I talk about the cost of doing renovations, and I've talked about electrical and plumbing. That was 5 years ago. Like, that is no longer applicable. How
Jeff,
many
I'll
guys
say
are in your trade, Joel, who haven't changed the pricing yet?
Over one 7-month period of time in 2022, the cost of copper went up 300%. Over 7 months, the cost of PVC went up 500%. That's not an exaggeration. That's a scientific fact. We've seen that settle and moderate a little bit, right? As things have found an equilibrium. But we still have
lumber was the same way too, though. Eh? Like the whole thing,
Yeah.
supply chain just went to hell. So
yeah, that's it. We still have some equipment that's 52 weeks out when you order it.
really, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. So what about electrical panels? I mean, I saw you do an electrical panel with a Leviton system. That looked brilliant, clean, sexy, all that good stuff.
Love it.
And you mentioned, hey, give them a couple extra breakers in case, because it is hard to get parts.
Yeah. Oh, the Leviton panel is beautiful. Like, it's very DIY friendly. Has this beautiful aesthetic charm. Some people require to put their panels in like the bedroom or the living room based upon, you know, physical indoor limitation. You may not have a dedicated mechanical room. That thing looks sharp. But to your point, like, while you're supplying breakers, go ahead and give them a few extras, because that's more of a supply house panel. It's a little bit more fresh off the press. It's just not a Home Depot panel today. But I could foresee it being a Home Depot brand, because it is with respect to
down the road
and plugs and yeah.
So it's not like buying a Cybertruck where you give $100 and wait 10 years.
No, thankfully that panel's sitting on the shelf right now.
Okay, good. Because like we had issues with you know, on-demand hot water tank systems, because you can get the system, but you couldn't get parts.
Ooh. No. Thankfully, most of the lead times come in the 400 amp and above range. That 200 amp resi stuff and below, that's pretty well sitting on the shelf and fully restocked.
All right. That's great to know. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to just take a minute here. We're going to ask Matt to throw up some questions. I'm sure he's going to be making a list. So let's get some feedback from our viewers and see if we can help some folks out here. Ravinder, I have added an EV charger to the permit. I have laid 6 NMD90 cable, and I'll be putting in a 50 amp breaker for it. Is there any receptacle that can have, it comes tamper proof with the cover? That's a lot of power, isn't it?
It is a lot of power. You know, I'm not aware of a traditional tamper-proof receptacle, but you could put a flip lid on it and some kind of seal or lock if you've got a small one and you want to help protect them.
Yeah, I'm just thinking off the top of my head that, man, oh man, you could almost jimmy rig your own box if you had to. If you're worried about your kids sticking a knife in it or something, like, you know, put it behind. Make your own trap door with a metal door on it. Put a lock on it, like if you had to. My goodness, that's really interesting. So, how safe are these EV chargers in the garage from being tampered by kids who are fooling around?
It's a really good question. That's a risk, you know.
Okay.
That's a real risk in dwelling spaces. The code now requires tamper-proof receptacles, and however, these outlets tend to be less accessible to children. You can elevate them above the ground so that they can only be easily accessed by an adult.
That makes
So
sense. So
I think
let's
there's
set them up at 5 feet then.
yeah, yeah, and you can get just an
Okay.
outdoor flip lid cover, right? That's indoor compatible, but you would be
Yeah,
fully
yeah.
sealed and protected and rain tight too, if that's a consideration.
Well, we also watch the effective electrical code, right? I mean, all you need is one fire somewhere, and the whole code changes for the whole world, right? Like, because they don't want them. It's bad for business,
Yeah.
right? It's bad for business. So, like, I've seen the code change so many times; it's kind of hilarious. I remember when they changed the code so that every plug in the kitchen had to have its own breaker, and then there was no room in the panel to do a renovation. And then everybody was asking for 200 amp service instead of 100. And then they came back and said, you know what? People are breaking the rules all the time because they can't do it properly without major expense. So let's go back to, well, we'll use a 20 amp wire. How's that sound? And you can do 2 plugs off the same circuit. Because, I mean, the top and bottom used to be split in Ontario. Breaker for the top and a breaker for the bottom in the kitchen. And so you do a
Whoa,
kitchen and you got 12 slots for your kitchen, right? It was nuts. Yeah.
that is amazing.
They were solving a problem. Somebody must have had a traumatic fire and they were trying to solve a problem. And it was just like not practical, right? You can't say cars can only go 3 miles an hour because somebody walked across the freeway. You can't do it. And so that's kind of what happened. But anyway, oh man,
Unreal.
that's interesting to
Unreal.
know though, because like now you've got this massive power source that's not hidden behind an appliance. Like dryers and stoves, you can't get to the plug. But if this thing's left alone in the garage, parents beware. Think about that.
It's a really good point.
Maybe just build yourself a plywood box and put a bedroom lock on it or something so that you need a key or something. Anyway. Okay, great question. Matt, let's grab another one. Let's see if we can scare the hell out of more people. All right. Cyrus, member. Listen, guys, I'm pretty sure you're used to this by now, but when we're asking questions, we're going to pull up members' questions. All right. Membership has privileges, so feel free to join if you have a question that you want to get an answer to, or jump into the super chat if you're just here for a few minutes and you're like really got a burning question you need an answer. My panel skips several spots on the top and the neutral bar and uses the lower ones instead. New breakers can't barely reach the available slots. So it's the only option undoing and moving everything. Wow. That's a really difficult question to really formulate. I almost need a picture, but I'll be honest with you. I've seen electrical panels that are so busy. Years and years of rewiring and 20 extra feet of wire in the panel before they go to this. If you can't get to the breaker location with your wire length, are you allowed to twist and Moret and bring a new line to that breaker? There's the answer to that question. It's not what everybody wants to do, but is it allowed?
Jeff, here's my take. The code is vague and it reads like this. If there is room in the panel and the manufacturer allows for that, then yes. That varies by jurisdiction. Some inspectors will ding it if you do, and some will allow it. But ultimately, it's got to be approved by the manufacturer and there has to be sufficient space, which is not defined in that portion of the code.
So there's a bit of a dance when it comes to this kind of thing between who's liable. Is that the idea? Because like if a manufacturer says no, but some say yes, then the gray area in the world says, yeah, but really if there's room, big deal if this manufacturer doesn't agree with the idea. Like people are going to do it, right?
That's right.
It's like drinking and driving. Right? Yeah. What brother's been doing it for years? It must be safe. Like anyway. We all know that human beings are not the smartest when we are collectively counted by the million.
That's good. Jeff said he'd bust out in some extraordinary Canadian accent for us if I Uber Eats him a couple of like a 6-pack of beer. And so guys, it's on its way. If you stick around, Jeff's going to start talking like straight Canadian here for us.
Yeah. Hey, cheers. Mary is here today. I just saw Mary. One of our members has been with me for 45 years, about 38 years before I started the channel. Great to have you here tonight, Mary. Mary has a question here. Matt, can you throw up Mary's question while we're talking about her? You got a lot of people who've been supporting us for 2 years. This is awesome. Say I have 2 fluorescent lights going down a hallway. It's a friend of mine, right? I'd like to remove them and install a line of pot lights. If the wattage pull is equal, is that considered extending the circuit? She's trying to interpret code here, I think.
Barry, what
Yeah.
I'd say to you there is that if your wattage is equal or less, you're good to go. Extending the circuit is going to come down to local interpretation by the AHJ. If your overall wire length is comparable, then the answer could be no. If you're going to call your inspector and ask the question and put it to them, then the answer typically is yes. And they're going to require a permit. Whenever you ask, the answer is yes, and they require a permit.
So extending the circuit, that's electrical language. Does that mean the wire total length has gotten longer, or you've added more fixtures to the circuit?
It's a good question. So generally, the interpretation is this: if you're doing maintenance, license permit not required. You can swap a 1-for-1 and get away without that. If you are extending the circuit, and that where often is not defined because the authority wants to maintain some latitude to interpret the situation, if you're extending the circuit, license and permit required.
Right. Okay, so let's just make this clear. Whenever you do electrical work, you need to get a permit. Now, for everybody who isn't, be smart about it. Oh, because we all know, like, I mean, how many houses do I have to renovate before the world catches up and starts doing things on permit? Like, unbelievable. You all are guilty and you know it. Raise your hand, hit the like button if you've wired your house or done any electrical without a permit before, and you shouldn't have. There you go. This video will now go viral because the truth is free. Matt, let's go back to the questions. This is awesome. Jeff, if an individual rewires their house themselves and up to code, if changing the panel later, are there any concern from an electrician's perspective and permitting in the Pacific Northwest US? Okay. Well, here, let's break this down. If you're going to rewire your house and then you're going to change the panel later, the rough-in on that wiring is a code issue that needs inspecting. It's separate from the panel. So if you're getting a permit for the rewiring and you go to the old panel, or you leave all your wires hanging in your electrical room because you're in the middle of a renovation, that's fine to the best of my knowledge. Is that true? An uncharged circuit is fine if it's roughed in, and you just label the wire, you leave it dangling. Are we okay with do that?
Okay, some of the jurisdictions around here are a little bit more picky. You can run provisional conduit without wire, and that is the extent. As soon as wire is being pulled, whether energized or not, a permit is required before the work is performed, and an inspection is required before the work is covered. That, I would say, is probably the prevailing definition, but it will definitely vary across state lines.
Right. So like in my experience in Ontario, as long as I got all my boxes and my wires run to them, and I've got my wire ground looped around the ground screw and all that kind of jazz, and I've got my staples and I've got the right depth in this stud, and I've got protective plates if I need it. If all of the wiring finishes off in the electrical room and it's just dangling there until a later date, there's no inherent rule break about that, is there?
No, that's totally fine. You can have provisional wire.
There we go. Beautiful. All right. Well, we got a super chat. Let's deal with that. Vitaly, how to wire a modern ceiling light fixture and have a chance to pass an inspection with a small ceiling plate. The ceiling plate is 2-inch wide and won't cover an octagon ceiling box. Are you kidding me? Is that even a thing? Do we have fixtures out there with a 2-inch cover plate on it? Have you seen this?
Jeff, the more you pay for a fixture, the harder it is to install. Like, there's this threshold, like really cheap fixtures are a pain.
Right.
That moderate priced fixture, that's usually real simple. And then once that price starts elevating, kind of like that 2x, 3x, 4x price range, some of those are just really unique. They're from Europe. They're not intended to match the American wiring infrastructure and system. And so, Vitaly, I would say you probably need what would be called a goof ring or a beauty ring. If it's a UL listed part, it should pass inspection. And that's kind of the basic thought there is make sure it's UL listed, because if you use anything for electrical work and it's not got that UL approval, then that's a fundamental code violation. You can't use a plumbing part. You can't use a wood block with a hole drilled in it as a beauty ring, because that's a combustible material. It's not UL listed. So I would think along those lines and look up goof ring, beauty ring, or canopy. And I would modify, at the very least, if you're going to modify something, modify an electrical component to fit your situation, and then spray paint it or something to that effect. Because a small electrical box like that, they do make some undersized, like 3 1/4 inch, but that 2 inch, ooh, bro, I'm not seeing it.
That's harsh. I wouldn't even know how to be creative there. Like, do you get it like one of those metal round covers with the number 8 screws, and then like core drill out the hole so that, and then put in a crossbar with a threaded rod or something? But like, you get creative, and all of a sudden, the math doesn't line up when you get inspected, right?
That's right. Yeah, box fill, violation, whatever.
So if you're going to buy something that doesn't cover at least a 4-inch octagon box, you're in for a world of hurt, right?
That's it.
Like, ouch. Ugh. Okay. Great question, but hopefully that helps. All right. And if you didn't catch that, rewind it and get the information off of Joel there and do some research, and hopefully that works out for you. Cheers, Maddie. Jason Pereira, another one of our members who's been around as long as I've been shaving. Toronto, Ontario, 1960s home. Got a 10-year-old AC and furnace that's working fine. What's your opinion on heat pumps, which the government is giving a $6,500 rebate in my case? Replace both or not worth?
Now I feel like we're back to politics, Jeff. You're going to have to go first.
I'm going to jump in. I actually have some recent experience with heat pump technology. You're going to love this. So up until recent times, Mitsubishi's had the market cornered with a heat pump on the American scale that goes down to -5. And it'll actually heat a home. There is a new technology on the market that works down to -17 at 118% efficiency. Okay? That the engineer of that team lives in Montreal, Quebec. A hell of a lot colder than Toronto, and he's got that technology in his home as the guinea pig, and he does not need supplemental heat. So I'm going to tell you right now, if you have the opportunity for a $6,500 rebate, Jason, send me a message in our forum, and I will contact you, connect the dots. The product is weeks, or if not days away from approval. All right? That's all I can tell you. I got the inside scoop, but that is going to change the world. I'm telling you right now, this new heat pump gives you free fuel. The air outside can heat your home even at -17. The majority of North America does not experience weather worse than that. And so there's no more need for fossil fuel to your home to heat your house. It's going to be a game changer. And Joel, if you want to hear about this off camera, I'm on an NDA. I can only go so far with this. But yeah, it is going to be a game changer. So stay tuned. And if you see my face in other places, there's a reason for that. Anyway, let's move on. But that works. It's going to be exciting. Because honestly, when I grew up in the trades, most of the heat pump technology, we had to go down into the earth, and it wasn't sufficient. It wasn't hot enough in the winter, and it wasn't cold enough in the summer. But man, they have really, really refined a lot of the details of all the different stages. And these engineers have come together, and it is amazing to see what they've come up with. It's kind of like if solar became overnight, somebody figured out how to make it 4 times more effective. So not only were you taking care of your own house, but you were powering the grid. That's the kind of change that this has made in that industry. So yeah, mini splits are cool, but this is a heat pump technology that will blow your mind. It even has multiple ducting so you can zone your house. It's unbelievable. Anyway, let's get to another question. we can nerd out on this later, Joel.
Man, that is unreal.
After the live stream is over, and I'll tell you what's going on.
Sounds good.
Return Sarah. Cheers. Thanks for the question. How to add one recessed can housing from one near it? You already have cans and want to splice, or just add wire to add one? Okay. Looked at the housing. It didn't have simple Romex wires. Wow. So you've got a light scenario here, and they want to add another light in the vicinity, but the can doesn't have Romex wires. So how do you add on to that? What kind of wire does it have? Return Sarah, let me know. You're watching. What wire is there? Or you just can't see where the entry point is. I don't know too many can lights that don't have a Romex wire going to it. I have seen light fixtures in some people's basements from the 70s with speaker wire used as the power supply.
Beautiful.
Have you ever bumped into that?
Oh yeah, speaker wire tacked to the surface, run up here and there, and
Right. And then they staple the 1x1 ceiling on. Yep, I know, it's just crazy. Oh my goodness. All right, let's get on to the different question here, and then we'll get back to that if we hear. Okay, Chris, can a receptacle spontaneously cause an open neutral if it fails?
sure.
I think at the end of the day, people need to understand a lot of these receptacles are just plastic components with metal components. And if there's any failure at all, they fall in half. Like you've seen this before, I'm sure, dude, right? Like you got to pull it out of the wall and it's like, it just, right? It looks like somebody just got disemboweled right there in the wall. Yeah. It's crazy, right? Yeah. Plugs, receptacles are not a guarantee of safety. They do fail over time, especially if there's something going on where they're getting too much heat or if there's too much movement. You got to realize when your plug is attached to the wall, if it doesn't move, when you're plugging in and out hundreds and thousands of times over its lifetime, you're putting a lot of force and a lot of into that thing, right? If it's moving, it's even worse. So then moving parts, they break faster. But yeah, consider changing out your plugs if they're more than 20 years old. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
If you don't have Decora plugs, feel free to switch them out because you know what? I've seen a fair amount of receptacles just disintegrate in front of my eyes. It's a real thing. Vitali's coming back with another question. Here we go. Does 12-volt wiring require inspection? For instance, he has a power adapter to 12-volt working from 120-volt outlet. And then I have a wire from the adapter to LED strip hidden behind the wall. So Vitali is doing his own low voltage wiring. Does that require an inspection? And feel free to say I can't comment if it's crossing a line for you.
That's good. Okay, so it does depend on your jurisdiction. I'm working in the Chicagoland area right now. Bad history of fires in Chicagoland. We all know that. Probably even in Canada, you saw the smoke. It was a long time ago. But we've got to, for instance, wire can lights from can light to can light through studs and otherwise in EMT conduit. Hard metal conduit, right? No exception, the entire house. In addition, in that particular jurisdiction, as a for instance, low voltage, Cat 6, has to be in conduit. And ask myself the question, how many house fires have been started by Cat 6? The answer is probably 0. However, bad history of fires, not taking any chances. It's non-metallic, flexible conduit is allowed for low voltage, but it's got to be running conduit and it must be inspected. So that will vary by jurisdiction. Generally speaking, in most jurisdictions, you'll get away as the homeowner running your own low voltage 12-volt. Anything below 50 volts is, in fact, below 30 volts is considered non-lethal in a wet location, and you will not require a license or permit, generally speaking.
I love how you say generally speaking. Here's the thing that I like to say. You got to be your own greatest critic in these scenarios, because you know those little 9-volt batteries, right? And those little rectangles. And if you stick it on your tongue, you'll feel alive, right? There's only 9 volts. But it'll it's there, right? Yeah, you can check to see if it's working or if it's dead by sticking it on a wet tongue. If you're doing low voltage technology, you've got to understand one thing. If you're wrong and you cause a fire and you never got it permitted, you're also not insured. So, I'm just saying, I love people doing work themselves, but get yourself a permit for everything. And if you're not sure, ask the permit officer And if they say go ahead and do whatever you want to do with that because it doesn't fall under our purview, then you're free. But don't go up the chain looking for permission to do something that's a little sketchy. Start with your electrical authority and ask them. All right. Because, none of us want to be dragged into court one day because we said on a live show that it probably sounds like a good idea to me, Anyway.
Jeff,
Matt, let's get another question. Oh, sorry, Joel, go ahead.
No, this is interesting. We've got some jurisdictions in rural Indiana. We're just Hoosiers over here, known for corn and racetracks. And we've got some jurisdictions where you could put a 50 kilowatt array operating at 600 volts DC on someone's home, solar panels and energy storage. And the jurisdiction says we have no training and no idea about solar, no permit and no inspection required. So just to give you a sense as to, some jurisdictions are permitting 12 volt and there's a license to it, larger jurisdictions, and sometimes you can do 50 kilowatts at 600 volts and there's no permit, there's no license.
Yeah, the whole permit question, it comes and goes. A lot of it is politics and policy, right? So where you live does matter. And at the end of the day, none of us can give a right answer for everybody all the time. So always check. Like when I call up my guy and I'll say, hey, listen, I'm renovating a kitchen. I got to open a permit to do my rough-in. They say, well, how many locations? Well, first you need to know a location is anywhere where there's a box, right? And then you tell them how many lights and how many switches and how many plugs you're going to do. And is there a dishwasher or whatever? And they take the total number of fixtures and then they come up with a price for the permit. So when they show up to do the rough-in inspection, the number of fixtures on your permit better equal what you've wired in too. So just be careful out there, guys. But getting a permit is not difficult. Generally speaking, the permit officers come out there to go, hey, want to make sure you're not going to kill yourself, your family, or whoever buys this house. That's a pretty reasonable reason to be in your home. So let's not get weird about it. They're there to make sure that your life is safe. And the task itself is not that difficult. So if you're afraid of getting a permit, you probably need to watch a couple more hours of Joel's videos to learn how to wire properly. That's all. Invest the time, okay? It's just not worth it. Oh my God. All right. Return to Sarah. Okay, my answer to Jeff's question. The electrical looks built into the can housing with a thick corrugated wiring. Okay, so she doesn't have Romex. She has...
like BX, Greenfield.
BX,
MC.
yes, sir. And I can't see any wiring, just the thick hose thing I think wires are in. Yes, BX. It is a metal, like an armadillo looking kind of cable covering, right?
That's it.
And it's designed to protect the wire from penetration from screws and nails and all that other stuff. Very commercial. Where do we use BX wiring in residential? Does anybody?
1940s through 60s homes. Well, even 30s through 60s will often have BX
Back before
wiring.
we had a building code and everybody's experimenting and they're all trying to, lobby the government to have their idea adopted into the code, right? Yeah, I get it. So if you have BX cabling, which is still used in very many commercial applications, whatever your can housing is, Sarah, and Joel, tell me if I'm wrong, but you can put a connector into that housing, connect Romex to those wires in the housing, because it'll be the same wires. Use the NMD 90, what are you using, 12s, 14s? 14.2 probably, and then run to your next light. Does that sound about right?
That's right, yeah. 14 if it's a 15 amp circuit, 12 if it's a 20 amp. And for some reason it's like a condo or a multifamily or something of that nature, you might need to use MC cable, which is generally what it's called, available at supply houses and in the code, as opposed to non-metallic cable. But typically, okay, Jeff, 99% of the time, you're 100% right.
If it's a single family home, NMD 90, 14.2 takes care of lighting.
Boom.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Okay, Joseph, super chat. And cheers, Joseph. Appreciate that. I want to add 2 exterior outlets. So we'll have 3,600 simultaneous watts available for tools, vacuum lights, etc. Is there a better way than 2 GFCIs, 2 12-2 Romex lines, or 2 15 amp breakers? I guess the question is, if 3,600 watts is a 20 amp 2-plug solution even legal on the outside of a house if one of them's on a GFCI where it starts. Does that work?
Sure. Yeah.
Because you can put a GFCI at the beginning of your circuit, like closest to the panel, and then a regular plug at the other end. But if it's 20 in Ontario, we have to use the T slot. Are you guys using T slot?
Yeah, sure. Sometimes. Generally,
So in our
everything
code,
residential.
anything with a T identifies it as a 20 amp plug. And that's how we know the difference, right? And so then that's where we are. But yeah, so if you can do that, you're great. That's awesome. To clarify, you want those 2 outlets next to each other, and I plan to plug 2 15 amp extension cords. Well, I don't want to hear about your extension cords, but yeah, if you put 2 plugs next to each other so that you can run power, that's fine. Make sure if you're running extension cords, okay, off of a 20 amp circuit, you're using a 12-2 cord. Don't use a 15 amp extension cord on a 20 amp circuit. I know they're expensive. I don't care. I'm not even going to go there. If you've got a 20 amp plug, get a 12-2 cord. Is that fair enough?
Got it.
Would you ever use, like, especially if you're going to be like setting up a workshop and that cord's going to stay plugged in, right? It's going to overheat. You got a risk of fire there. It's a real thing. You know, Joel, back before I was in contracting as a custom bathroom guy, I worked in a lot of fire flood restoration. You wouldn't believe the number of house fires were started by an air conditioner that was too many BTUs for the unit plugged into a 15 amp circuit in the wall.
Or a space heater, right?
That is hell, because I'm telling you, when that goes, man, oh man. One thing that air conditioning units all have in common is they're usually around window treatments. And that sucker goes up in a hurry, let me tell you. Yeah. You do not want to have that melt down on you, because it is hard to escape a house that's full of black smoke because your polyester drapes have gone up first. Man, oh man, scary stuff. You know what? Electricity is a wonderful thing. And when it's dealt with properly, it's incredibly safe. It takes a real idiot to cause a fire. So don't be that guy, all right? It's just not worth it. I've been in so many houses where the smoke line from the smoke in the room came down to just about a foot off the floor. Scary stuff. And you know what? We have response time in town with fire departments of under 5 minutes. But it happens quick. So don't screw around with this stuff, guys. Chris wants to know, can Cat 6 use existing holes with regular 120 volt wiring in it, or it'll create crosstalk? That makes sense?
Crosstalk. Yeah.
So you got somebody burrows a 1/2 inch hole in his stud. They got a 12-2 or a 14-2 wire in there, and he wants to run his Cat 6 in there. What is crosstalk, first of all? Because Chris is always over my head when it comes to this stuff.
I love those viewers making us smarter. So effectively, it's inductance coming off the electrical magnetic field, creating disturbance from the higher voltage, higher power line onto the lower voltage line. And so it's a rapid sequence of electrical signals that's then becoming disrupted by the electric magnetic field.
Gotcha.
And yes, you can cross perpendicular, but anytime you run parallel for really any length, you're at risk of crosstalk.
Okay, so it's like being stuck in an elevator with somebody with really bad breath.
No,
You're going to have a problem if you travel too far. Got it. All right. Makes sense. Okay, Michael's got a question here. Going to build 8-foot walls along the interior perimeter of a metal building with 10-foot side walls. Can I run Romex secured to the top of those walls, or is there a better way to do it?
Okay, that 8-foot is actually magic, right? Jurisdictions are going to vary in their definitions. Generally speaking, exposed Romex that's above 8 feet is not considered subject to physical damage. So you could probably just staple it right to the top and it will probably be protected. Some inspectors are a little bit more particular and they'll say, you know how people are going to use this space? They're going to throw something up over the wall. They're going to hang something on the wall and they're going to damage that cable. And they'll be real kind of practically oriented, even though it satisfies the strictest definition of the code. And remember, at the end of the day, the AHJ is the authority. They get to interpret, they get to make the rules, they get to do whatever the heck they want. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say from a code perspective, generally, yes, you'll be good.
So from a code perspective, you're good, but from an inspector's perspective, depending on their life experience and how their wife is treating them that day, like there's a lot of variability, right? Like I've had inspectors on a site who having a bad day, and you're the guy they're going to take it out on, male and female. And I've had inspectors on sites who, have had a rough day all day long, and they get to your job and they're like, oh, finally someone who looks like they know what the hell they're doing. They can calm down, and you're their new best friend. Just remember, when you're dealing with inspectors, they're people like everybody else, right? They have good days and bad days. So be courteous, be clean, be organized, and be done. Do not ask an inspector onto an electrical rough-in inspection and say, oh, I'm going to put a wall there and notch the top. Trust me. You haven't earned that trust yet. If you've been in the business for a while, you can get away with stuff like that, right? You can just drop a lead and say, that's for the switch. We'll build the wall later. Yeah, we've all done that. But as a homeowner, make sure your work is completed so that they can actually inspect it. Nothing worse than coming to do half an inspection, because the next time they come, they are going to be hunting.
Oh, Jeff, so good, man.
Yeah.
I had one inspector who said a 2-year-old just died in the fire. No smoke detectors in the house. You want to ask me how I'm feeling today? And I said, sir, yes, sir. Smoke detectors in every bedroom, within 15 feet of the exterior of the bedroom, on each floor, carbon monoxide combination devices. Like, he was not gonna play, and he made it very clear right out of the gate.
Yep, right out of the gate. Because that experience will set you back. I actually met somebody at the trade show last year in Las Vegas who was a proponent of putting in sprinkler systems in residential property.
Yeah.
New home construction, it costs $2,000. The average home in America is $350. The one in Canada is $800. $2,000. Well, let's all stop putting pavement in the driveway and go to gravel if that's what we got to do. But man, would that ever make a lot more sense? How many lives does pavement save versus gravel in the driveway? Redirect your money. That's what I got to say. Because, think about it.
Wow.
Do you really need the asphalt, or would that fire suppression system be a lot more favorable? Just saying. Woof. Gonna get me all worked up. All right. Ryan Ferguson, member of the channel for a while now, live in Ontario and have had 2 different inspectors conflict with each other. It happens. One says I need to put the Dietrich heat on a dedicated circuit, and the other one told me to power it off a room beside it. Oh, how do you resolve conflicts between different electrical inspectors? Well, there's a great question for you, Joel. I got my own answer, but I want to hear yours first because I've been there.
Yeah. Wow, man. You got to, there's some dynamic that sometimes inspectors don't like to be told they're wrong. If you've got an unapproachable inspector, I would go to the supervisor, and generally the supervisor will make a determination. If you can avoid throwing somebody under the bus, being a little bit too pointed or antagonistic, it can be better received. I'll give you a case in point. I was on a job site the day before Thanksgiving. Inspector strolled up and said, every single person on this job site in this jurisdiction must be licensed. We said, the apprentices who are operating under my master license as a licensed contractor with my licensed journeyman here co-supervising the work, he said, every apprentice, everyone in this jurisdiction must be licensed. Okay. We went to the building commissioner. We had actually sorted this all out ahead of time. The message hadn't got to him. The short story is this. He was redirected. We were doing solar work. So their building commissioner had made an exception because we're not doing traditional electrical wiring. So there's heaving rack. There's mechanical work that's being performed too, right? The inspector walks back to the job after talking to the building commissioner. He hands me the tag. He says, nice conduit work. And he walks off. There's no, I'm sorry. There's no, the industry is not known for humility. It's known for pride. So you're going to have to tread lightly and go to a supervisor as respectfully and humbly as possible.
You need to understand that inspectors are going to have a bit of a God complex, because in the same way that you have an inspector come into your house, it's almost like getting pulled over by the cop for speeding, right? They don't know if you're a criminal or not. So they're going to be a little over the top, maybe a little authoritarian. until you've developed some kind of rapport or relationship, you just don't have any idea, right? So, like I said, have it done, have it clean, be on time, be ready, have the lights on, like invite them in, like don't try to hide anything. I've seen so many people try to hide things from inspectors, and when that happens, man, look out. But the question specifically was about Dietrich. The Dietrich heat. Have you worked much with the Dietrich heat from Schluter?
Yeah.
In-floor electric radiant heating. Okay, so how big of a mat and how many amps before you go, hey, we got to do a load test on this circuit? Or do you always do a load test? Or do you do dedicated only for these things where you are?
That's a good question. It does depend on the size of the floor mat and the amp draw.
Yeah.
I will say typically it's during a bathroom remodel, and we know we've got a good dedicated 20 amp circuit prescribed by code to the master bath. And the best code minimum and best practice don't often or even always line up, right? The
Right.
bathrooms we're working on, someone's dropping $100,000 on their master suite, and we're not going to take 8 or 10 of those amps for the Dietrich and have her trip her curling iron when she's trying to live in this lavish luxury. So I'm going to say we always dedicate Dietrich. Always, functionally, because nobody wants the nuisance of having to look the homeowner in the eye and say, I saved you $60 and I'm sorry your floor.
I save you $60 and here's 2 weeks of headache. Yeah. So here's the flip side. The average bathroom size in America is actually 5 by 7 or 5 by 8. And if you're heating that space, you're really heating 15 square feet. And so your amperage is usually less than 1. And so you can get away with cheating, but it really does come down to the size of the floor. There's no one size fits all here, right? And is it a warming system or is it a heating system? Are you running the cable every three or every 4? Is it the source of heat for the bathroom, or is it just to warm the floor for comfort and convenience so that you have that drying effect, right? I ran into a code effect issue doing my daughter's bathroom because we heated the floor. I ran the cable past the linear drain, which was at the door to the shower, underneath the wall tile, heated the floor in the shower, up the bench and up the wall. Probably broke a couple of rules, but that's all right. Yeah, right? Look at their expression, right?
That's fancy.
ESA says you can't do that. And I said, why not? And they said, because the product literature doesn't allow you to do that. I said, the product literature is relating to warranty. I understand I'm voiding my warranty. Show me where this is against the law. And they couldn't prove it otherwise, and they let me pass it. Yep.
Well done, Jeff. Well done.
Cheers to the little guy. All right. Let me tell you something. There's nothing like sitting on a heated bench with a heated back wall in a shower. You know,
amazing.
It's a gorgeous shower. We actually we stole a 4th bedroom, made it a walk-in closet, and then turned the walk-in closet into the shower off the master ensuite. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do as a homeowner on permit. There's a lot more flexibility, guys, for DIYers out there on a permit than there is for contractors. I'll just say that right out of the gate, because if you don't have a license, they don't hold you to the same standard. A little more wiggle room. All right. Oh, Vitalia's back. He's got another round of questioning. Oh my God, Matt, let's run that one up while we're thinking about it. Can I wire a switch to receptacle on the ceiling? 120 volt LED strip in bathroom hallway. Still hoping to have that inspected. Can I wire a switch to a receptacle on the ceiling? Interesting.
Yeah.
Like we do that in garages all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I can't see that. As long as it's accessible. It's got to be accessible, right?
Mm-hmm.
It should be fine. All right. Very cool.
GFCI requirements apply, like respect that. But
yeah, your distance, right? So what is your distance in a bathroom to wet areas? Is it 3 feet to the switch? Or is it in the wet room period?
Yeah, if it's in the bathroom period in the US of A, it's going to be GFCI protected.
Okay, so we've got a distance to the switch to water. So you can't possibly be touching the switch and have your foot in the water at the same time, right? Interesting. So we actually design our bathrooms so that the door can be on the other side of the switch on that wall so that you can't possibly turn it on while you're still in the wet area. But
that's cool. No, actually, I misunderstood the question. Switches generally exempt unless they can be reached from within the wet area. Receptacles, GFCI protected at all times.
Yeah,
So I
okay.
think, yeah,
Fair enough. So it's somewhat similar.
correct.
I hate to think I'm teaching people to blow themselves up and they're going to fail their inspection. That's awesome. All right, Cirrus. My washer is on a dedicated 20 amp, but still dims lights when it agitates. What are the odds it's just the older washer drawing too much power as opposed to insufficient supply or imbalanced phases?
So I ask a question. We'll run through a couple of scenarios here, right? If the lights are on the same circuit as the washer and it's just those lights on that circuit, then it's a localized circuit issue. That could be some poor terminations. And so when that heavy draw, then it draws the voltage of the circuit down. That's the disruption you're seeing. If it's the entire house, like, no, all my lights in the entire home, then it's probably the case when your washer, air conditioner, et cetera, kick on. And it's that inrush current. And it's also indicative of either inrush current or some poor connections. And you might think, no, I just had my panel upgraded. I've got no poor connections. Well, there are utility connections and multiple utility connections between your house and the transformer. And at one time or another, I've seen every single one of those connections fail and result in kind of a dramatic event for the homeowner, whether it's an overhead or underground service, whether it's a new service or an old service. We've seen it all. We've seen those meter bases start to flicker, start to smolder, start to spark, and burst into flame. Like, it's a reality. Somewhere along the line, if the lights are dropping out, it's probably indicative of some kind of mid to low quality connection somewhere.
It's also indicative of having an older house because we haven't had lights and plugs on the same circuit for a while now. Right? Like, I mean, when I did my laundry room in the church recently, my electrical guy told me, he said, you know, we have a rule that the plugs in the laundry room have to be on a dedicated circuit. The washer can go into that circuit, but you can have multiple plugs in the room. And I was just like, well, how much power does the washer actually use then? Right? What's the amperage pull? And now it got me all thinking about that. It's like, wow. But if you have your lights and your washer on the same thing and you have an old washer, maybe your amperage pull is just too much. And maybe your lights aren't LED, they're incandescent. Like all these different factors, right? It's kind of like flushing the toilet and taking a shower. Is your technology up to speed to keep you from getting scalded, right?
That's it. Such a good example.
Like I plugged in a Glade plug-in and a wall plug in my kitchen here today, just this afternoon. I was like, oh, we're going to make it smell pretty. Something went and I lost my connection to my live feed. And so I'm like,
so
I probably have a loose plug and broke a wire connection to the hot or something, right?
That's so good. Just that little heating element in the Glade plug-in was enough amp draw to cook
well,
the circuit.
It might have been the element, but it might have been the motion of plugging it in. And maybe that wire that plug's a little loose. So that wire's been going like this. You do that too many times, they just break right off, right?
They do.
And then
they do.
Yeah, life happens.
I can't tell you the number of times I've seen a homeowner's called us out for repair. And they said, I've had this, little space heater running for a week. Everything's been fine. Then all of a sudden, poof. It's been fine for so long. Never had an issue. All of a sudden, poof. It's like, well, yeah, it's just sometimes things cook quickly. Sometimes they cook slowly. But when they cook too long.
Okay, take yourself for a drive down Route 66, all right? And redline your car. How many hours can you drive like that before your engine blows up?
That's it.
It's the same thing, right? Oh, my goodness. All right. Brian's mentioning here that you were at Stud Pack recently. So what were you in Houston, Texas for, man? Or Montgomery, I should say.
Yeah.
At the Stud Pack house.
Such a good time. The kids went down to catch turtles, a snake. I went down to work with the Stud Pack guys. And
it was like a family vacay, was it?
It was. Yeah, the temperature was nice and cool, like 96 degrees. And Paul and Jordan are just fantastic guys. So I was doing some advice and consulting on the wiring of their dream garage. Simply that. Just got them. We didn't finish, but we got them off on the right foot and made some real progress. And it was great.
All right. Well, listen, we're getting to the end of the hour. I don't want to take you too long because you got a life. I'm just going to mention, usually I don't have a hat on when I'm working. This is like very rare, but it's because today I had an injury.
Oh no, Jeff. Ouch.
I should have got a stitch or two, but you know what? I got my electrical tape. Generally speaking, all right. Oh, there's a lag in the time. That's just to keep the blood from getting on my hat. I was just wiping my counter. I did my backsplash in the kitchen behind me. And I didn't realize, but the cabinets here in this house, because of the drop ceiling, are 2 inches lower than usual. And so it headered right off the doorknob. Oh, unbelievable. Anyway,
Sorry,
Joel,
bro.
for all the folks that are watching the channel, go ahead, plug yourself. Go crazy. You got your elevator pitch. Tell them why they should watch you, other than the fact that you've been amazing. Thanks for joining us today.
Man, I really appreciate being here. So Jefferson Electric is unique in that it's a brick and mortar contractor, right? We really serve real customers in Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, and Ohio. And we have a YouTube channel. We have an abundance mindset of sharing all the information and wealth that we could possibly share with anyone and everyone. One of the opportunities there is an e-protocol. So you can jump on a one-on-one call with me and I can walk you through your DIY project. Secondly, if you're in the electrical contracting or business, we have a coaching program. So it's ePro for Masters. And we have guys who we meet on a weekly basis and we dig in deep on our businesses. When I'm borrowing the phrase, but I love it so much, fix the owner, fix the shop. How do you keep the average small business in America from destroying the average small family in America? A lot of people start a business because they want to work 80 hours for themselves. So they don't have to work 40 hours for the man. Like, I've started 4 businesses at this point, and it's been tough. It's been real, nothing short of blood, sweat, and tears. And I have a heart and a passion for giving quality of life, for accelerating the success of those I get to coach and mentor every week. And so in any way I can help the world that we live in, man, I want to do it. With all my heart. I enjoy what I do, and I appreciate being here today, Jeff.
Joe, that's awesome. And I just wanted to say, guys, like, in business, we're limited to our experiences and who our mentors are and where we learn from. In business, I was blessed to have probably the worst human being on the face of the earth be my boss, but he was a stickler for details. And so I got trained to be perfect every time. I did not have a good mentor in business. I was a lousy businessman because I was a people pleaser. I never had a coach. I was just out there making a living, and just whatever hours it took to make that living, that's what I did. And it was not a good quality of life. So I'm glad that YouTube came along and that I took my son's advice to start this channel, because it's changed my family forever. If you're in the trades or you're looking to start a new career, consider taking a look. Learn from somebody who's been there, right? Like, that's why I started my channel. I share my experience. Hopefully it helps you go from, step to step. But the guy's got a lot of guys working for him. He's had success, so he's worth checking out. All right. Consider taking that step and gleaning from somebody else who's been there before you. You got 2 choices in life. You can learn it the hard way, or you can learn it from someone who has. That's it. That's all I got to say. All right. Cheers till next time. Joel, thanks so much for being on the show today. We are definitely going to have you back. This conversation was awesome. If we didn't get to your question, guys, then visit Joel on his site. Harass him for information. I know he's busy running a business and all, but or you can jump into our forum as a member, and we will see if we can help you out. Thanks for joining us today. This is Jeff from Florida saying cheers, and don't forget your electrical tape.